Before you buy Outriders, you might want to know all the pros and cons to make a conscious decision about your purchase. So in today's video, I'm going to summarize all the pros and cons that you need to know about Outriders. And this is based off my experience with the demo and several hours consuming dev diaries on YouTube. So first of all, what is Outriders? It's a third-person looter shooter focused around 3-player co-op. It includes a full multiplayer campaign, and supposedly it has a really in-depth endgame to keep you going after the campaign. Sounds amazing, right? Well, based off the last few years of disappointing co-op games, it's hard to put your expectations high. And this being a Square Enix published game, which just got over a disappointing Avengers title, it certainly begs to ask the question, is this another disappointment? So if you're looking for the short answer, it's a bit convoluted. It's a yes and a no, which is why we really need to dig into the pros and cons to better explain the areas of which this game excels at, where its downfalls are, and the unknowns that we won't come to understand until we reach the end game on release. But I suppose if you need the quick answer, I would say this isn't the perfect next-gen looter shooter that you've been dreaming about for ages. However, it can be decent enough to hold you off until the next one comes along, if this is a genre that you cannot get enough of. So let's get into it a little bit and talk a bit more about the game, starting with where it excels. Starting with the world setting environments that you will be playing in. The game takes place in a distant galaxy on a world named Enoch. A strange, mysterious source is killing, corrupting, and mutating humanity and turning it against one another. Through all this, you find yourself in a sort of a Mad Max post-apocalyptic wasteland on an alien planet. Bandits, mutants, raiders, creatures, and more plague the lands with their settlements and rundown encampments. I have to say, the world building is freaking amazing. I love every bit of it. Think of the struggles of a Mad Max mixed with the brutality of Doom, set in a Borderlands Pandora-style planet, and you have Outriders. This is certainly one of the game's strong points. Next up is what you'll be playing as in this amazing world. One of 4 Outrider classes and up to 3-player co-op. And your class choices and powers aren't your typical superhero standard stuff. Instead, think of yourself as almost an elemental demon from the Doom series. A hero with nasty villain powers which allow you to shred and dismember your foes in the most horrific ways possible. This, to me, is another one of the reasons the game stands out as very unique. So what are the 4 class choices? Well, this isn't a class overview video and the devs have covered them extensively on their channel, so I just want to skim over them here. The important thing to note here is that each class can equip up to 3 of 8 abilities. Each class has 3 different talent trees to specialize in, and they all specialize in a different magic element. So first up is the Techromancer, an ice element base for its starting magic type. It focuses on summoning a wicked assortment of turrets, gadgets to do its bidding. This also is considered the support class. The Pyromancer, the obvious fire-based element character. Everything here is fire, 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 and more fire. It's considered a mid-range DPS. The Trickster, a kinetic or electrical base for its starting magic type, focuses on melee close combat and utilizes its skills through mobility and battlefield manipulation. It is also considered both a tank and an assassin. The Devastator, an earthen elemental based class, focused primarily on close range combat and is considered the strongest tank class in the game. The part that I want to focus on with this class discussion is the fun factor of the classes as a whole. If you guys draw comparisons to other looter shooters like Destiny, Borderlands 3, Division, Anthem, etc., one thing that these games have in common is they lack the amount of skills that you get and how many cooldowns. Most of these games only have 1 or 2 abilities that you can kind of augment or change. Whereas Outriders will allow you to pick 3 out of 8 abilities, augment and enhance those abilities with gear, and finally even equip 2 additional abilities to each of your 3 weapons in the late game, meaning you can potentially cap out with 12 abilities to play with in each engagement, not even including the 2 melee abilities each character gets. This makes your moment-to-moment rotation options much more expansive than the other looter shooter games, and it seems like it's going to be really fun in that regard. And the most important thing about these skills is the freaking VFX. They're freaking amazing. At least the ones that I got to try on my Trickster. I teleport into combat, drop a slow feel, hit everyone with a blade, causing their flesh to disappear, turning them into nothing but skeletons before they explode into a ball of paste and blood. Meanwhile, bullet storms and exploding body bits are slowly flying everywhere through my slow field. It's literally eye candy fireworks show every time you enter combat. Blood, guts, bullets, and amazing abilities. That's the magic sauce right there. Not only are there multiple abilities to play around with, ways to customize wacky builds just like in Diablo 3, but the base gunplay also feels great too. Take away the amazing skills and it still feels like a good shooter. Throw in a really good loot system and that has even more potential at the late game. And we have a very strong base for an amazing looter shooter. So why isn't this an immediate buy then? Why was my introduction so reserved? Let's get into the negatives. First, let's talk about performance. The game has a major wide-known issue of frame stuttering. The game will drop to 0 frames almost every few seconds, making it almost unplayable for those who notice it. This even happens in the pre-rendered cutscenes. Something janky is going on under the hood in this engine, and it's concerning that they kept it in for a demo, which is supposed to showcase their game. This is not early access or a beta. This is a demonstration to the open public. And both the demo and the initial launch of the game were already pushed back 2 whole months due to performance issues. So they went ahead and released the demo anyways, and if that's not bad enough, the game crashes. And when the game crashes, it literally destroys the integrity of your game files. I found out this is a common issue, and the fix was to repair or reinstall your game entirely. This is just not acceptable for a demonstration. So let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that it gets fixed for release. But we're not done there. There's still more negatives. The game feels to have a misguided direction. The devs claim this to be a storytelling campaign experience with friends, yet they lock you into single player for the entire hour-long prologue, and the story is pretty generic and bland and super cringy at times.
You know, I grew up a slum dog, fighting for scraps. Don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Build a cabin.
Hey, is that supposed to blink that way?
Excellent work, Outrider.
Hey, it's an historic moment. We should document it.
Hey!
I thought this was the bathroom.
It's right in the middle of my line.
Planning it all the way here.
War is war. What, you think we just hug it?
Why do I even bother?
The irony of this storytelling experience is that the world around you, the action cinematics, actually do a better job at telling a story than the constant dialogue options slowing down your gameplay. They're trying to be Mass Effect in a game that just says, I need action. It's a situation where removing the dialogue options altogether may have actually made the game better. It's because the world environments and atmosphere are so rich, the slow generic dialogue just rips you out of the immersion entirely. There are way too many little story beats and cinematics that it just gets freaking annoying. There's even cutscenes for simple things such as opening a door, climbing a wall, or jumping over a small gap. Most people buy these games to jump in and kill shit with their friends, do they not? However, for the 5 hours that we played this co-op demo, the first hour was forced single player. And when we finally teamed up and we got to play this amazingly fun action-packed combat, it only lasted for about 2 minutes as we blew through everything, and then we would get stopped by 5-10 minutes of dialogue and running around. And this persisted for 5 hours. Of the entire 5-hour demo that we played, I think we might have only played 30 minutes of combat. That's pretty crazy. And to elaborate further on these short bursts of combat, each section of a level has maybe 10 enemies in a linear arena section. You clear the area and have a great time doing it, but suddenly the action stops abruptly. And this is the point where you either open a door to another small arena, or you return back to town for more boring dialogue. The moment you sink into combat and think, wow, this is an amazing game, it's already over, and 30 seconds later you're left feeling teased. And the process repeats itself for the entirety of the demo. You never once get to feel the palm-sweating, exhausting combat scenarios that leave you saying, "Let's go!" It just makes you feel robbed a little. And while the combat can be really fun in the short periods of time that you get to do it, it also has a bunch of fundamental issues. The cover system is so janky and it doesn't even work half the time. You don't regain more than 20% of your health while you're in cover, as the devs have stated that Outriders need to press the battle in order to get their health back. So the idea of the game is run and gun, and never take cover. So what's the sense of having a cover mechanic? The run and gun approach is really fun and I like it. However, in co-op, we just mowed through the entire game, only dying maybe once or twice on the hardest difficulty. I later went back to replay the single player and to get footage for this video and found the single player hardest difficulty to be nearly impossible. The reason for that being is I had no ally to draw out the enemy fire, and when I'm low on health, I need to attack people to get my life back, but I'm exposed and I get shot by 5 enemies and die. Not being able to heal and cover is a huge issue, and I see a major flaw in the kill to heal game design philosophy. To make matters worse, in single player, if you die, you actually just have to redo the whole checkpoint over. But in co-op, when we died, we just respawned instantly where we died. And we just didn't understand this mechanic. Why are we not getting punished for dying? We can just die infinitely and there's no punishment. We figured there would be a mechanic to force you to revive your ally before you both die and have to restart. Didn't seem to be the way it works. So in multiplayer, you're basically a kamikaze god. There's 2 of you drawing out fire, just wrecking everything. So there's half the amount of enemies, it feels like, because the 2 of you are splitting them. You die, you get back up. Single player, you rush in there. You're getting stormed by all the enemies. You can't take cover to heal. You have to run out and fight things to keep alive, but you're outnumbered and out DPS'd, so you die, and then you have to redo the whole checkpoint again. I don't understand the game logic here. The balance between co-op and single player is absurd. On the plus side, it made single player feel more fun because the checkpoints lasted longer than 30 seconds and you would actually have to redo them, which has me thinking, I thought this was a co-op game. So, some negative things, yes, but before you write this game off completely, we still have some other things to factor in. This is the early stages of the game. They may be going easy on us for the difficulty, and also trying to build up the story a little bit heavier in the beginning. The pacing, the amount of enemies, the sizes of the arenas, the length of engagements, all could be so much greater in the mid to late game. And the devs did specifically talk about some sort of large open battlefields called expeditions. So if the expeditions are great, and the endgame is awesome, and the levels get bigger with more enemies and longer engagement times, longer combat scenarios, then this is going to be a really fantastic game that had a really slow start. However, I digress. I still am skeptical based on evidence leading me to believe that that might not be true. This is a demo after all, not an early access, not a beta, and it was released in a poor performance state. A demo is usually a slice of your game, showcasing the funnest bits and letting you demo the selling points. I don't even think the devs know what the selling points are. They claim this to be a multiplayer looter shooter, but make you play through an hour-long prologue single player. And at that hour-long mark, when the game starts to get good, when we were on stream, we were like, why didn't you start your game here? I mean, it's freaking awesome where they throw you in after the prologue, and that's like the perfect place to start your game. It's a great introduction. It leaves a little bit of the story out without spoilers, so you can wait for release, and you just see this awesomeness, and then it lets you pick your class and you jump into kicking butt. It would have been skipping the prologue would have been amazing. And then taking that one step further, like, why didn't you just throw us into the mid game where we had richer combat engagements, more abilities and loot to play with, overall leading us more impressed and wanting more? And my concern is the answer to that question is because their mid game is no different than their early game, or it's just not ready yet. Because why wouldn't you take a better slice of your game if it was either ready or better than the early game? And this is a bit concerning considering the game's coming out in a month on April 1st. And the one thing that concerns me about the amount of enemies missing from the game in the early stages might be a factor in the mid to late game. The devs stated the reason we went with 3-player co-op instead of 4 is because the combat became too frantic and confusing with 4. I don't know what they're talking about. We were playing with 2 people and just steamrolling everything with no need to coordinate, no need to strategize our attacks or our movements, and we just slammed through these arena checkpoints in no time. I can see 4 players becoming a bit of a free-for-all, but in the sense of trying to get the kills before they're gone. And based off what I was saying earlier about the difficulty of single player, it feels like the game, the amount of enemies and the spawn rates and the size of the arena was designed for a single player. Meaning their excuse for only having 3 players is a bit of a cover-up because they know having 4 would just make things even easier and more contained. 4 people running around a small map is going to feel claustrophobic, not frantic and hard to tell what's going on. So that has me very, very concerned. Maybe all these negative points are just the results of a poorly designed and rush unoptimized demo, but the facts are the facts. If the game proceeds to play like the demo has, it's simply going to be a mediocre game at best, but maybe something to grab on sale. And hoping for everything to be optimized, open up, and over-delivered as promised and advertised for launch is simply something we cannot count on these days. Look at Cyberpunk, most importantly Avengers from Square Enix, considering Outriders is a Square Enix published game. It leaves me a bit worried. But if you love looter shooter games like me, there is still hope yet. Just remember the positives I stated in the beginning of the video. The core gameplay and environments are really quite enjoyable and even phenomenal at times. Being hungry for a looter shooter, I personally am willing to bite the bullet and pre-order this in hopes for it to be a good release. But there are enough negatives here which should deter the average person who's not desperate for a looter shooter like I am. So unless you're like me, you might want to hold off and see what the state of the game is when it ships. See how engaging that mid to late game content is. And if you do want an answer to that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, follow my Twitch channel as well. Links are in the description because I will be streaming Outriders on April 1st, the moment this game goes live, so that I can find out if my concerns are water under the bridge or if this is another Avengers 2.0. Save your pre-order money for now, tune back in later, because Outriders in its current state right now does have a lot of negatives and a lot of drawbacks, but there are some gems in there, and I tend to want to hold out for this one, so I'm checking it out. Hope you guys join me. My name's Johnny5Alive. This is Channel 5 Gaming. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It really helps me a lot, and I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Bye now.